I was rewatching my video I put up the other day. And I was talking about edit as you go, the sort of philosophy of kind of making corrections as you do it, rather than basically writing a bad draft. And I was listening to it; it was kind of clunky, and I wanted to make a couple clarifications on what I was referring to. The point I was trying to make is that the words and the sentences that you put down in your first draft are going to shape the rest of your story. Regardless of how many drafts you do, it's going to influence basically how the rest of the story plays out. Consider that when you open up your word processor and you stare at that blank page, you have an unlimited number of ways you can begin to tell your story. And the moment you put down your first word, you've already started to direct the shape of where it's going to go. And then what happens is one word begets another word, which begets a whole sentence, which begets a paragraph, which begets a chapter. So if you are writing your words absently, if you're putting words down just for the sake of getting, hitting your daily word count and ending your day, that those sentences that you put down, those words that you're putting in there that you're writing absently, are actually, in fact, affecting the entire shape of your story. Even if you go back and change them later, you've already predeterminedly said how you want to tell the story. You've already directed the means by which the story will be told. And there's always a chance that you might get lucky, and your story, the way you wrote it, even though you wrote it absently, might actually turn out to be a really good way of telling it. You might have told it in a fantastic means, or perhaps you may have a bit more conscious thought in your writing than maybe you're aware of. But what happens is when people tell you, your writing is not working, things aren't, when people tell you this piece simply isn't working, they can't really necessarily quantify why. One of the main contributors might be the fact that you simply committed yourself to telling the story in a certain way, and the means by which you're telling the story has not worked. Writing, it's somewhat analogous to putting down tile. If you ever put tile down either on the floor or done maybe like a backsplash design on your wall, what happens is that very first initial tile is what really determines the quality of your work. If that first tile is not, properly set, properly aligned, what's going to happen is every other piece of tile that follows that is going to be slanted or out of place as well, just because it's following the set order of the very first one. So if you can get your first words down, that first strong sentence, maybe that first, build it in that first strong paragraph, what happens is that you're starting a chain basically whereby every other paragraph and sentence can basically follow to make your chapter strong. Whereby if you're starting with a very, very weak word, you're already pre-committing yourself basically to a bit of a weaker chapter, just by the fact that everything you write after that is going to follow the initial word that you've put down. And I realized that sort of going into this level of detail, discussing the fact that, every word you put down needs to have meaning, can be very, very sort of panic inducing in a sense, right? To be that sort of obsessive over it. And so my goal is not to cause any kind of franticness or anything like that, but to more make you aware that the fact that what you put down on the page, even initially, is going to have a much bigger effect on your story than maybe you might have realized beforehand. And so simply, just me offering the advice that to be a bit more conscious of what you put down initially, just because what you revise is already going to have the building blocks of what you've put down in your first draft.